Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel. This is a new thing I'm going to be trying, so if you guys enjoy this kind of update where I do the patch notes in a short format, then do let me know down below and leave any feedback, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all the coming patches. Patch 9.10 brings a new god, Maui, tons of new skins, some very spicy balance changes, and a whole lot more. Starting with Maui, for a more in-depth look on Smite's newest Guardian, I have a full video on that which I'll link down below. I'm only going to cover him briefly here because of the format of this video. Maui is a Guardian focused heavily around pulls and displacement. His passive gives him a vertical cleave basic attack that can also pull enemies to him if they were recently hard CC'd. His 1 hooks the first god hit and pulls them towards him. His 2 provides protections and movement speed and AoE to his allies, while allowing allies to teleport to him by standing on the center water pillar. His 3 is his movement as he swings forward and backward and can jump down at any time, stunning enemies in the area. And finally, his ultimate rips an island from the battlefield, pulling enemies in the area towards Maui and leaving the island on the ground, which will block player movement for the next 4 seconds. New skins are coming this patch for Morgan Le Fay, Scylla, Skadi, Ra, Bastet, Aphrodite, Nox, Sylvanas, and Jubilanque. Maui is also getting his recolors, masteries, and a standard skin as well, with Guan Yu, Kali, and Thor getting patches in the bonus update, which will be dropping November 1st. 9.10 SMITE Night will be Shorthanded, Corrupted Arena, Siege, and then Classic Conquest for weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this patch respectively. Next up, we have a lot of extremely spicy item changes. Firstly, we have Purification Beads, which can now be used while in animations, channeled abilities, and on-target ability. This is a huge change that means you won't get locked into an ability channel or animation that causes you to not be able to bead and then get hit by like an Ares pull or whatever. Warlock Staff now only gets the 10% penetration when evolved, aka fully stacked, while Book of Thoth now gets a similar effect but with 10 flat penetration, not percent pen, when fully stacked. Charon's Coin gets a bit more magical power, Silverbranch Bow got a large cost increase and physical power reduction to bring it more in line with the base stats of other hunter items. Devourer's Gauntlet is getting the same 10 flat pen change that Book of Thoth got when fully stacked. These 2 changes are going to be pretty huge as flat penetration very early on in the game is very valuable. Heartseeker gets a cost reduction and buff to the passive where you don't need quite as much power to get that full 6% max health value. Heartward Amulet and all of its glyphs are getting 5 extra magical procs on the aura for teammates, and this also applies to you as the user as well, so a pretty decent buff here. Hide of the Nemean Lion gains its block stacks faster. Bancross Talon now gives 0.75% of your max HP and shields per cast instead of 1% before this patch. Manticore Spikes gets a well-deserved cost increase up to 2400, along with Fablest Hoops going up to 2300. More nerfs are probably needed for these items, so expect those in coming patches, but this is a start. Moving on to god changes, first up, Camazotz gets a small scaling buff on his 1, nothing crazy here, but prepare to see a little bit more Kama this patch. Thor's buffs, however, are not small by any means. He's getting a mana cost decrease to his hammer to bring it more in line with other abilities in terms of mana cost, but the big change is that Tectonic Rift, his wall stun, now deals a decent amount of damage on hit. Damage was added to this way back in beta and it was removed almost immediately because it was super overpowered, so we'll see how this change goes. The game is on a much higher power level now than it was back in beta, so I think this change can probably be handled. It's still a huge Thor buff though, and you can expect to see a lot more of the God of Thunder. Ganesha gets a small buff to his Ohm and a pretty large buff to remove obstacles, reducing its cooldown quite significantly into the later ranks of the ability. Athena's Taunt got similar treatment, lowering the cooldown as you rank it up, and her ultimate gives more damage mitigation to the target, and also Athena now gains that damage mitigation as well while she's channeling. Hercules gets a small base attack speed buff and more power from his passive. This takes his passive power from 9 to 15 at level 1, which is a pretty big deal, and more powerful than it looks in terms of early boxing given the 100% power scaling on physical basic attacks. Tyr's stance change now gives half the buff from the opposite stance. Shiver is getting some pretty substantial buffs to both his 1 and his 2, which of course chain right off of each other, so this should be pretty impactful for him in this patch. Morgan Le Fay got some reverts to the cooldowns on her 1 and 3 that were done in earlier patches. Sol also gets some reverts to the power scaling on both her 1 and ultimate. Janus gets a cooldown decrease on Threshold and a decent power scaling increase on his ultimate as well. And hers Impale has its base damage and scaling increased by 15 per level and 5% scaling respectively. Early in the game, this is a pretty big increase, going from 90 to 105 at level 1, so this should help his early clear out quite a lot and give him that aggression that he really needs in the early laning phase. Continuing on with Hunters, we have Charybdis, whose Spike Shot and Capsize both get base damage increases, which will help her poke and clear, especially early on. And finally, Ishtar's 1 is getting buffs, don't ask me why, with the duration increased by 1 second, and Storm and Strike Shots both getting damage increases. While Rolling Thunder, the ability more in need of a buff in my opinion, also gets a solid base damage increase of 10 at rank 1, scaling up to 30 at max rank. Keep in mind this can hit multiple times, so this is a pretty substantial damage increase. Prepare to see even more Ishtars in your game after this patch. But that's all I've got for the 9.10 Maui update in 5 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Peace out, you nerds.